Welcome to Racing Green live from Earthfest 2024. Today, our guest host, Gemma Tuck, chats with successful eco-entrepreneur Jordan Brompton from myenergi about the revolution in eco-smart home devices. Here, among a host of topics, Jordan discusses solar-powered EV chargers, battery storage systems, and the future of home energy solutions.
Hi, I'm Gemma Tuck. I am a communications consultant for startup climate tech businesses, and I'm insanely excited to be sitting down to talk to Jordan Brompton today, the epitome of female founders in climate tech in the UK at the moment. So I'll welcome Jordan to the stage.
Thank you.
No worries.
Cheers.
So look, I am sure that everyone here and everyone listening knows who you are, knows about myenergi, one of the world's fastest growth climate tech startups. Yeah. But just in case, and in your own words, if you give us a little idea of your journey so far over the last 7 years.
Yeah. So in 2016, me and my co-founder, Lee Sutton, set up myenergi, and we are an electronics business. We're a manufacturer of eco-smart home devices, and that is particularly devices that go in homes with solar panels. So we invented the world's first electric vehicle charger that charges the car from solar and links with green tariffs. We've got an energy diverter, which means that the surplus solar from the roof is going to your hot water tank or underfloor heating. Mm-hmm. So we're doing our part for decarbonising heat as well. And we've just launched a battery storage system. So really and we're also a software business. So we link all of that tech together, manufacture it, put it in the homes, install it in the homes, then link it all together for a seamless experience for the homeowner and the customer.
Wow. A lot going on.
Yeah, and it's been a whirlwind. So we set up in 2016, and we've now got 250 odd staff in the UK, and we've opened offices all around the world as well. So we about 300 staff in total, about 65 million turnover business. So it's grown very fast through this electric revolution, and it's nice to be based in the north of England and do all of the manufacturing and distribute it around the world. So it's been a whirlwind, to say the least.
And how has that growth trajectory been for you? Obviously, there's been a lot of big changes happening in that time. Yeah. The pandemic, but changes in tariffs, etc. How have you navigated it?
To be honest, like an absolute ninja. It's been really hard. Like you say, COVID, we've had supply chain issues like chip shortages at one point. So we had to redesign all of our products to go onto a new chip just so that we could meet the demand. We then had there was grants available for our chargers, and then they were pulled quite quickly by the government. So we had grant reductions and changes. And then we got the cost of living crisis, which put the spooks up people from switching to electric. And what else we have? COVID. I mean, literally in the 7 years, I don't think this business could have taken any more than what it's taken in terms of headwinds. However, it seems that the mass market, we started off a very early adopter market in 2016. It now seems to be going a lot more mainstream, and it's gaining real momentum. So we built a whole new factory to be able to keep up with production so that we could keep manufacturing in the UK. But we also had to partner with an electronics manufacturer around the world so that we could manufacture local to each market that we're in. Wow. So we're ready for growth because this industry, the electrification of heat and transport, is only going one way. So we need to scale, make sure the foundations are strong. And also just make sure that we're building a business that is quite resilient to these changes, because we're quite reliant on the car market for one. So in 2023, for example, it was the worst, not just electric vehicles, but cars as a whole was the worst it's ever been in 15 years. Retail sales just stopped. So if people aren't buying cars, they're not buying chargers. But then luckily the solar market was really picking up because of the cost of energy. People were installing panels more, and that's when people start to fit our kit. So they get the panels fitted, and then they think, right, how am I going to maximize this energy instead of exporting it all to the grid? And that's where we really come into our own. So we're very reliant on markets doing well, but then it's very different around the world. So if the UK drops off, Germany's flying, for example, or Australia's really picking up. So we're just trying to make sure that we're versatile as possible.
And do you think, as a kind of a startup, fast growth business, having that ability to react quite nimbly to situations rather than a big corporate, do you think that's really helped you in terms of that growth?
Absolutely. That startup nitty gritty business when you're all in it together as a family allows you to move a lot like quicker.
Yeah.
But then as you scale and as you take on capital, we closed around at the end of 2023, we raised £30 million. The business is now starting to go in a different direction. It's becoming a lot more corporate, a lot more structured. It can be a little slower to make decisions. However, the investors that we've got are high growth investors, so they also want us to move quite quick as a business still, because the market's there to be had. So it's going to be an interesting phase.
And you kind of spoke about responding to kind of customer need, and also, I guess, myenergi is very reliant on individuals taking that leap into the world of electrification. What do you hear from customers? What are they saying to you when they're embarking on that journey? What are their challenges? What are their concerns? And how do you handle them?
Yeah, so the early adopter market are quite keen just to get stuck in and get this kit in their home, and then they're very vocal about how you can make improvements. So we've listened to them for the first, 5 years. Well, we'll always listen to them, but for the first 5 years, they've helped mold our business. But now it's going very mainstream. We're seeing that the customers are looking for something completely different to what the early adopter market are wanting. So they're they just want ease. They don't want any impacts into their life. They want this transition to electric to be exactly the same as how it's always been driving petrol and diesel, like just how easy it is to charge the car. It needs to be simple. So I think more autonomy in our tech and making sure that it's working seamlessly, and then eventually we're going to be looking at AI and how everything can automate around the home and start profiling the home, and the tech just works instead of any interference from like a human at all. You fit it in, setup wizard comes in, sets it all up in the software and then takes over. So I think that's the way that the business is going. At the minute, there's a lot of autonomy in our products, but you've still got to do quite a bit of setup. I think it'll be, for the mainstream market, it'll be smoothing that whole process out. I think mainstream just want easy. They don't even want to notice the switch from petrol to electric.
Well, you spoke in the panel earlier about, the ease of use, and being able to kind of plug in your car and see a light and know that it's working. I mean, my worst nightmare would be the idea, I'm getting out of the house, school run, thought I plugged it in and I hadn't, I think that, as you say, that ease of use, that is going to be the thing that kind of helps push those moves from early adopters to kind of more broader scale adoption.
Things like an LED light, just insinuate flashing green, knowing, all right, it's charging. I can go back in. And because we've got screens at the moment, which has got a lot of information on, but we're finding more and more people are just wanting to use the app. Like, we've got quite a high engagement rate on our app with people checking it, because it's really quite addictive. When you load up the app and you see that you're being like 90% green or something, you start obsessing about that next 10% of how you can get completely off grid or be green, and that's where you get really interactive with your products around the home. But I think just being able to log in and look at it and feel good and then move on will be the best, be the ultimate goal.
And you kind of, obviously, as a female founder, and quite, unusual in this space, in this tech space, in this EV space. Where do you feel like you could play a role in that kind of simplification and usability area?
I think that's been a big USP for the business, is the fact that me and Lee are like polar opposites. Like, morally we're the same, but then we're total yin and yang when it comes to personality types. I'm the more outgoing one. I'll come and speak to you guys. He's like hiding behind the scenes. I try and drag him out, but he won't. He's like the guy that's inventing the tech. And then I'll add the like marketing flair into it, the sales. I'll speak to the customers. I'll also look at our technology and make sure that it's user friendly and it's not too technical, because when you've got a group of engineers that they sometimes overcomplicate it or over engineer it, so it adds a nice mix, because at the end of the day it's 50% of the population are women and are going to be using our tech. It needs to speak to women as well as the blokes, and just being all around good user interface. But I think it's also brought a lot of attention to the business, which is nice, because there aren't many females in the space. I've used it and I've leaned into it to leverage, the growth of the brand and things like that. And I think, that's something to be celebrated. And I think we need more women. I'm always an advocate of getting women into engineering and into coding and software. Like, I never had those opportunities growing up. I grew up in Grimsby, and I was told that I could be a hairdresser or I could go into travel and tourism. That was literally my only options. I was very like C grade student. I wasn't that academic, but I always knew I wanted my own business. I always knew I wanted to hustle. I was working from like 13 years old. But growing up in Grimsby, there was no career options. And if someone said to me, you could be an engineer. I thought that meant literally like oil on the face, mud on the face. I was going to be like a mechanical, making cars and stuff like that. I didn't think that it would be like, oh, I could develop an app, or I could make this really nice tech that goes in the homes that's going to make it super sustainable, like, and green. Just wasn't even a thing. So I think like it's been really important to me to keep my business locally to my hometown, grow the business and grow the factory there, and then set the apprenticeship scheme up. We've got some female engineers that are working amongst the older bloke engineers and like really like adding a lot of value from a female's perspective. And I'm just like, God, I wish we could do that more. So we're like going to work with the local universities, and I go and try and do talks. And I think just representation, just the fact that I am a co-founder of a tech business, that's why I get out and do these podcasts and these talks, because then it's relatable to the females that are out there. They can look at somebody and go, wow, like somebody's done it.
Yeah, representation matters,
It really does, And
I think narrative is so important as well. I think one of the things we spoke about when we were kind of chatting ahead of this was around building trust, particularly in the media at the moment. Things can feel very negative around sustainability in the sustainability space. It's, when, you hear about a lot of eco-anxiety coming, and you can completely understand where that's coming from. I think, from an energy perspective, on one side we've got big profit reports from big energy companies, and you kind of compare that to real consumer pain on energy pricing. We're being told we've got to shift away from oil and gas as quickly as possible, but then we've got people coming out going, well, if we do that, we're going to get blackouts. How important do you think is building trust in this kind of energy sustainability space, and how do we go about doing it?
It's so important, and it's just another headwind for our business at the moment in terms of like the negative press that sustainability and electric vehicles and things like that are getting. I think it's just about having grown-up conversations. So like chats like this, the electric revolution, electric cars, there's still a carbon footprint to make them. Like, we can't just pretend that they're the most greenest thing ever. And if you're plugging into a dirty grid or a dirty energy provider, there's arguments to say it's still not that green. But the way that I look at it is, when you put in petrol in a car, there's so much energy that's gone in to produce the petrol to get it to that point. To then bang it into a car to burn it for a few miles into the atmosphere to nothing. There's just no argument for me that if you can charge an electric vehicle with renewable energy, either from your own microgeneration on your roof or from a green energy tariff, then it is actually green. There's no argument, and you're not spewing this waste out of the exhaust into the atmosphere for no reason.
Which you can literally see.
It's so energy intensive to produce petrol. It's just wild. So I think it's about having grown-up conversations, and also the fact that oil it's a finite product. It will run out eventually. They've been saying it for years, and it hasn't yet. But it will eventually. So what are we supposed to do? Just sit in our hands? And I think it's going to be like multiple technologies that we need. Hydrogen will play a part for like heavy goods, like lorries and planes and boats and things like that. I think electric, we've literally got electric everywhere. We've got roofs everywhere. There's 40 million homes in the UK that could have solar panels on the roof. We've now got, 1,300,000 homes and it's gaining momentum. I think there's like 14,000 homes a month getting solar on the roof. And that doesn't just mean like, that plays into the whole grid. That adds like energy sustainability, that adds energy security as a country. And if more and more homes had solar on the roof, and every new build had solar on the roof, that would allow more renewables onto the grid. So like large wind farms and large solar, which would make us more energy secure as a business. So and I think people think that, I'm getting solar on my roof, it's not going to help the wider issue. It really does. Towards that energy security, it really does. And I think at the minute, the price of energy shouldn't be what it is. It should be anchored towards renewable energy costs, but it's anchored towards gas. I think it will come down, but it's also, we've got to be realistic that if we just brought it to the same price as renewables, we would completely crash an economy, which is the gas economy, and we'd sink people into fuel poverty. It has to be weaned off, and it has to be a balanced approach, and it has to be a grown-up conversation. It's like a mix of all sorts. And I think some media are doing a terrible injustice at the moment by slagging this green agenda as something that's like for the woke, and it's not really green, and are really labeling it in a bad way, when really it just needs to be discussed as adults, one step forward, one in front of the other. How are we progressing as a civilization? How are we like looking at all businesses? And we're on our B Corp journey. It's going to be a bloody mission as a manufacturer.
Yes, I've heard it's quite tricky.
But we're on that journey because every single business has a responsibility for the generation that's behind us. It's like, I think the Gen Zers and the millennials, well, Gen Zs definitely, but millennials really are waking up to the fact that we can't just keep overproducing, over-consuming. We have actually got one planet, and we've got to start being a little bit more responsible with our decisions and having grown-up conversations and including everybody in the conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that solar opportunity, when you think, because myenergi was the first company to connect solar with EV charging, I mean, that feels wild, you know, when you came across that revelation, you know, how did that feel?
It was so good. Like, we had a product that was diverting spare solar power from the roof to a hot water tank. And I thought that was genius on its own. I loved that whole idea that you could literally keep all of your solar generation in your home into your hot water tank, because it's like a giant store. And at the time, like, battery storage systems were so expensive. So I was calling it like the poor man's battery, because I couldn't afford battery storage, I couldn't afford solar panels, but I wanted to live off grid. And our whole mission is to remove barriers to a greener future. And I really do believe that renewable energy and this sort of tech should be a necessity, not a luxury. So we're trying to remove barriers and make sure that it's accessible to everybody moving forward. I forgot what your question was.
It was just around that. It's just around that feeling that you had. I love hearing about
it was
when we invented relationship.
So we had that first product already, and then when Lee said to me, "Jord, I think we can use the same technology that would divert into the hot water tank to the car, to a car battery," and he had a Nissan Leaf on his front at the time, and I was like, "What do you mean that your solar's not going to the car?" And he was like, "Well, it's not, like, the charger's got no smarts in it, like, it's just going straight out to the grid, or if I turn something on in the home takes priority and not the car." And I was like, "Get in that shed and go make me a charger that works with that solar and I will sell it." And at the time there was no EVs on the market. There was the Nissan Leaf, that was it, and the Prius or something like that. But I was like, that is literally the future. I just saw, like, if you could charge the car for completely free or with green energy, I was like, that has got to be the future. It made me feel good. And I think we're all about giving the power back to the consumer. I think so much, like, about business these days is taking power away from us. Everything, our food source is controlled, our water source is controlled, our energy is controlled. But actually, like, what can we play that part to give some people some power back? And it's such a good feeling when you've got the solar on your roof, when you've got the battery storage system so you can work, you know, I'm literally 100% green most of the time, like throughout the summer. Even on the winter, on days like this, you're still generating.
It's amazing.
And then when you're out at work or whatever, all the power's going into your battery. And then at peak times when electricity is really expensive, my battery kicks in and I'm charging off the free solar that I generated all day. So you're just taking yourself completely off grid. And that is like a really, really good, it's a good feeling. So customers just become completely obsessed with every little kilowatt that they're producing themselves. They want to keep it in the house.
I think that's such an amazing thing. I mean, you talk quite a bit about giving the power back to the people. You know, it feels like a very kind of anarchist message, but I love it. And I think, is that a big part of the mission at myenergi?
Yeah, it is. Give the power back to the people, which means, you know, it's a bit of a worrying message that you don't have the power right now, but I think that you can be completely in your control as things progress and as we get technology like this. There is, you know, we've got to talk about it. Cost is a problem at the moment for like everybody. You know, you're talking £10,000 to £20,000 for a decent sized system and array, and like people look at it and who's got that expenditure
lying around
to go. So we're trying to work with, now that we're of a certain size and we've got economies of scale and the costs of these technologies are coming down, trying to make sure and advocate that these costs are passed on to the end user, that there's things like zero finance options, or we partner with banks and societies to look at green mortgages and things like that, and then lobby like governments and say these products, like particularly solar, should come as standard on every new build. Like, let's just break the pattern and start doing it from now, and then look what we can do to retrofit in others. So there's lots of different ways that we can try and get it moving without paying for it all ourselves. I'd love to give everybody free solar. You're getting free solar. You're getting free solar. But it's just not realistic. We've just got to try and keep pushing the boundaries over time as time moves on, and just do talks like this to educate people on it. So if they are feeling a bit nervous or a bit scared to make that commitment or don't know if they can, at least they've got a brand that they can come to, which can connect all of the dots, the install, the tech. I think it's quite scary for consumers at the moment because they might think, I want solar panels. First thing you do is you go on Google. You're probably going to get linked to a local electrician that's selling solar panels. He might sell multiple different pieces of technology, and you'll think, right, well, I'll trust this installer and I'll go for it, but then none of the tech works in the house, and it's all fighting each other where the power goes.
It's not working together.
It's not going to link with your energy tariff and things like that. So I'm really trying to just spread the word that there's a brand out there that links all of that together, and we can now link the install for you as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's amazing how you kind of diversified your service offers, just to be able to help consumers at different points. I think, but this has got to be the future, right? Looking at the grid and assuming that we're not going to suddenly get billions of pounds to completely rebuild it.
Yeah.
This focus on I guess home hubs and that energy security is got to be kind of the easiest. I hesitate to say the easiest way forward, but the most obvious way forward in terms of energy use for the future.
Yeah, and just to give you an example of that, like we've got 200,000 connected customers in the UK now. When we get to 1 million connected customers, that's actually like 7 gigawatts of flexible power. And to put that into perspective, like Drax is 4 gigawatts, and that's the biggest power station in the UK. Yeah. So homes can play a massive part in this revolution. And we're actually about to launch like our demand side response program, which means that customers who've invested in our tech are already saving. Yeah. But then they can actually start earning off their cash. And there's a lot of propaganda around this, like, oh my God, the government wants to control our charges. It's like, no, actually, they're willing to pay you. The energy system's willing to pay you to be on, it's what's called on response, on demand side response. So if you don't need a full charge, you've got a car battery sat on your driveway. Yeah. To be able to flex that power back and forth is actually really huge and plays again into the whole wider system. So customers can now actually get paid for being on standby for the large energy providers to flex their assets as and when they want, and literally drops into their app as a payment. And that's how I see the future of it going. Like more and more homes have solar. When the grid wants that solar power, you can let it go to the grid and you can get paid for it. Yeah. If you've got batteries in your home or a battery on your drive, you can flex that power. You're essentially working for the grid and with the grid. So they don't need costly, upgrades. And also, like, there's things that we can do in homes, in workplaces, for example, like where you have multiple Zappy chargers, our charger, they can load shed. So if, like, they're all in use, you don't have to put costly upgrades to that building. Yeah. The chargers will diversify and manage the charge of multiple cars and load shed. So, like, one takes the car out, the charge will go up to everybody else. So it'll set, like, it'll do all the working out for you and for the building, depending on what your limit is as a supply.
I think it's really interesting because if you work in the industry, you know that grid balancing is a major issue. A lot of, I guess, the arguments against the likes of solar and wind energy is it's intermittent. It's you're only going to get power when the sun shines, not as brightly as people think it needs to, but ultimately you're not going to be getting solar power at night. So I think when you're in the industry and you understand that, the idea of governments and energy companies using the homes to help balance out makes perfect sense. Yeah. Coming from an individual that perhaps doesn't, work in the sector, I think it can be, you can see how it's daunting. It's a bit, it's daunting. Yeah. How do you think that we win over everyone to this real future of electrification and take that fear out of it?
I think it just needs to stop being rammed down people's throats as a force. Because naturally I'm a bit like, if someone's forcing something on you, the government's forcing something on you, it makes you go, what are you doing? Yeah. But I think if we just encourage, prove out, bring people on the journey, I think you'd gain a lot more trust than being like, you have to do this. And if you're driving a diesel, then you hate polar bears. Like, literally, I think we just need to have more inclusive chats. Yeah. And then use companies. It's not just myenergi. There's multiple companies across the space that are doing great things. Like Octopus Energy, one of our partners, are really leading the way in this stuff, installing the heat pumps, the dynamic tariffs. I think just including homeowners and consumers in the conversation early on, and making sure that they've got opt-out options. Yeah. So, I'm really passionate about that at myenergi. It's your hardware, it's your home, it's your charger. you can opt in to help flex the grid and earn money off you want from it, but the grid aren't going to stop your charge if you need charge.
Yeah.
So I think about having that grown-up conversation that it's your asset, you've bought it, you're in charge of it. If you want to earn more, this is how you can help the grid. Then educate them and explain why. And then just let people make the choice themselves.
Yeah. I think, and so obviously myenergi focuses very much on the home at the moment. Do you have that? You touched a little bit about the commercial application in terms of EV charging. Is that something you guys are looking at, or is your passion very much kind of that kind of home energy?
Our passion's definitely the home, and the ecosystem works best in the home. However, because of some of it's like really smart tech, we find more and more people are installing them in businesses.
Yeah.
So we've sort of been not forced, but we've willingly done it, but added features into the product to make sure that it suits workplaces as well. Particularly, we've seen a big increase in salary sacrifice and for cars and leasing companies. Like in the last year, the whole market's pivoted towards that. Like a lot of people who are buying company cars are buying the product. So making sure that it works for the lease company, or making sure that it works for the fleet. So the fleet owner can see what the charge is for the business miles and for the personal miles. There's some of the software that we've added in recently. And also we found that our hardware was being installed in like a lot of small commercial businesses, like restaurants or Airbnbs and hotels and things like that. So we've just literally last week uploaded a new feature where people can pay for a charge. So the person that's fitted the chargers can charge for the energy now, and not lose out that way. Not just giving free energy away all day long to their customers, that they can charge for it. So it's not like a massive focus of ours, but it's something that we've done just to make life a little bit easier for people that are fitting it anyway in businesses. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I think hearing you talk, it seems a lot about moving in the right direction. I think there seems to be a bit of an obsession with getting things perfect, and I think, that really can be the enemy of progress. Do you think that's what's helping you at myenergi in terms of just taking that next step forward each time and just developing a product, responding to customer need, responding to the market?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think we've been a victim of that at times, where it's delayed us getting new tech out because you're trying to get it absolutely perfect. But I think as long as the hardware is fine, you can always reiterate and add features with the software. So we've taken a bit of a new approach in the last year or so to be a bit more dynamic and do a little bit more around the software and the digital side of it. Like, once the hardware's solid, it's solid. So how can we then start innovating around the software, which is like the stuff that we're doing with the demand side response, with the government adding in the feature to be able to charge for your charge. So I think it's about a little bit more like move fast, like fail fast, try different things. As long as the hardware's solid, then all's good.
Yeah. And, it can be a lot of information for kind of individual to take on. Where do people start? If we've got people sitting in the audience or people listening thinking, this sounds amazing, but I've got no idea.
Yeah.
Where do they start?
It is now, like, you could try and start like with myenergi. You could come to our website and have a little look around. You could speak to your energy provider, particularly if you've got a green energy provider. They are starting to look and understand that this sort of kit in the home is going to be the most important, and they're seeing it as the future as well. So I think, or you can speak to your local electrician, but just, it depends very much on what they're selling and what they've got stock of at the moment, and finding what's sort of right for you. But I think just educating yourself as much as possible by listening to podcasts, looking at some of the channels that are promoting this stuff on like YouTube, and just finding what fits for your use case. But the good thing about the myenergi device is they're pretty flexible. Pretty flexible for all uses. So. Yeah.
I mean, going back a little bit to the kind of the beginning of myenergi, you kind of talk about having lived a number of lives yourself. I love hearing about the story between you, Lee, and I think that example about getting to that product, that solar product, is a great example of partnering engineering thinking with common sense practical thinking. Do you ever feel, that was my sliding doors moment? Like, what would have happened if I hadn't gone for that initial job or met Lee and been able to launch myenergi?
I definitely feel like I found my calling when I met Lee, because I'd been, like, as you said, I've had 100 lives. I've been a radio presenter. I've been a nightclub dancer. I've traveled the world. I've worked in education. I've like literally done a million jobs because I just never knew what I wanted to do straight out of school.
Yeah.
But when I met Lee, he was literally working he had like 2 or 3 engineers, and they were literally hand soldering these devices and shipping them off to electricians, like local electricians. I thought I could really like grow this. And once I understood like what it was actually doing and the technology, it's like something in my brain just clicked. I was like, I love that, because it's taking you off grid, and how can we explore that more? And we call ourselves Pinky in the Brain. Obviously I'm the brain. Because it was just that perfect dynamic of, oh my God, you can make cool stuff. And I'm confident that I can sell that, because I really believe in the wider mission. And I'm so grateful that I got that click. But I really believe that it was from trying lots of things in my early years, like failing fast, just trying lots of different jobs, seeing where I fit, seeing what I'm good at, knowing what I'm good at, understanding the value that I can bring, and then leaning into something when it feels good. Like when I literally just thought that is a good idea. And I think most people like go out and raise cash. They think they get a good idea, they go out and raise cash. No one would have given us the cash if we'd have gone out and raised it. We had to put all of it up ourselves. Like we put our houses at risk, and we literally just started building this business. And it was because of that sheer belief that what we were doing had to be the future of energy, and it just had to be the future of homes. And I was just so passionate about it, so just continued to plug away. But these days I see businesses go out and raise millions. They'd have laughed us. No one was driving EVs. All the solar grants had been pulled, so solar was slow. They'd have just been like, not a chance in hell are we investing in this business. So we've proved it out.
Hey, and I think, having gone on the journey that you've been on and had the success that you've had, how important do you think it is that we continue to have this type of innovation, this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, particularly coming out of towns like Grimsby and across the UK? How integral to that is that to our kind of energy transition? And
to be honest, we talk about success, but it's just like it's head down grind every single day trying to hang on to it, because it's so challenging. But I think it's so important just getting out there, doing these talks, like banging the drum for entrepreneurialism, banging the drum for female entrepreneurs and sustainability in tech. But innovation is absolutely key, because this industry is moving so fast. Like in the time that I've seen it in 7 years, it's wild, like the changes that it's been through, the legislation changing, regs changing, and it's different in each market. Like the energy systems work different in each market, so there's a hell of a lot of learning, hell of a lot of adapting. Got to stay on top of your game for innovation, because it's like sometimes being first is not always the best place, because you've then got thousands of homes with technical debt that you've got to try and like keep up with. You keep iterating your firmware, when someone new and shiny can come in and get the money off the bank now, because we've proved the concept. We've proved the concept, and we've proved there's a market. So to stay ahead of your game is actually probably the most challenging time. But we're up for the challenge, and we've got a solid team in Grimsby. It's not just in Grimsby; it's dotted all over the country, obviously, with remote and hybrid working. That was one good thing that came out of COVID: open people's minds to how people can work. So I think just take the bull by the horns, listen to our customers, keep innovating. We've got like a huge roadmap of products that we're going to bring out, not just hardware but digitally as well. So I think as long as we keep moving with the times and innovating and keeping our finger on the pulse for the industry, it'll be a good thing. And then hopefully, like, there's a lot of opportunity in this space. I was talking about it on the panel. Like, this switch to electrification, people forget about heat. Like, heat is the biggest energy consumer in the homes, like heating our hot water, heating the houses. That's really energy intensive, and everything's switching to electric. So it needs to be brought into the conversation, and how that works alongside e-mobility and works alongside your car and your home become this whole ecosystem. It's a huge difference. It's a huge transformation that's happening, but it's a hugely important topic that we just need to keep banging down the doors and innovating around. And that creates jobs. It creates opportunities for other startups. I see a lot of SaaS businesses popping up, which are really cool and getting crazy valuations because they've seen problems that the market's going to have and they've just solved it at the right time. Like, and just the success of myenergi outside of Grimsby, like I call it the ripple effect. The ripple effect that has, we support lots of other local businesses, whether it be the local cleaning business that comes in and looks after the factory, whether it's the the marketing teams that are helping us. We try and support that locally, whether it's the colleges changing their curriculum to match the green energy that's on their doorstep with Ørsted and myenergi. It's actually like really crazy how much of a ripple effect one successful business in an area like that can have. So I think
it's easy to forget about those local benefits. Obviously the energy transition is a global issue. It's huge. It's something we have to tackle. But I think also to focus on the community-led side of things is also really important too. It's an area we can't forget. You talked about the potential at times to actually have those almost kind of communal hubs when it comes to energy as well, and building that out.
Yeah, we do that. We do that in the local area as well. We've got a project, a renewable project that happened in Grimsby, where we put all of our tech in there so that people could see it and hands-on learn. Like students go to look at it. They Ørsted have partnered with them as well to show them how wind turbines are made, the materials and things like that. And then do talks at the local university and the schools just to show them all the opportunities that are on the doorstep now in all the different departments. Is really something that's key, because it's something I never had growing up. The opportunity just wasn't available. There.
Yeah. And I think in terms of myenergi, so you've come this far in 7 years.
Yeah.
Are you going to? Is the plan to repeat it again in terms of growth and
that's always
success?
The hope. That's always the hope. But the level of growth that we've had has been insane. It was like 200% growth year on year at one point, and that gets harder and harder the bigger that you get, especially with manufacturing capabilities. But I think international expansion is definitely something, because it's not just a UK problem. This problem of electrification of heat and transport is it's in every market. A whole world sort of woke up to it. So we're in Germany, we're in Ireland, we're in Australia, and we're in the Netherlands region, but we've definitely got our eyes set on like France and Spain. US is really interesting, but it's completely state by state. So international expansion's key, and that will help us grow. But also just like extending our product portfolio and our services is what we're going to be focused on in the next few years, as well as like selling the products that we've already got overseas.
And when do you think, you talk about the fact that it's difficult to recognize the success, you've still got, you've got even bigger business to run at this stage. When do you think you'll be able to sit back, have a cup of tea and think, that's good?
One of my personal missions is to get 1 million connected homes in the UK, just to be able to throw a party and say we've got more flexible power than the biggest power station in the UK. Like, that's nuts. And that's you, like myenergi consumers, that's you that have got that power, that you can offer that back to the grid. That will be just like a real tick. It's one of my personal missions that I've given myself.
So then you can have your cup of tea.
I'll have a cup of tea.
And then I guess in terms of, having been on this journey, having built what you've built, where do you see kind of the real areas of positivity? Obviously we've got a long way to go. Everyone knows that. The news, the climate change, it's very much in your face, but where do you see the areas where, we've done well, we're doing well, this is good?
It's really when I have the interaction with my customers. When I see like those screen grabs online of them being 90% green or 100% green that day, I'm like, wow, that is making like a real difference. And then they're beaming with pride, and then they're passing it on. And it just shines a real light on what is possible with technology, and it excites me about technology. It doesn't need to be scary. It can be amazing. So I think, and just being in this space, like naturally I get to see all the other startups and all the other businesses, and even the large corporates, what they're trying to do within the space. And it fills me with a lot of hope for the next generation, for like my daughter's generation, because I feel like people have genuinely woken up to it. And I think if you just ignore if you ignore the neggy media, and look outside and actually speak to people, we all want the same things. We all just want to be safe. We all just want energy security. We all just want to feed our kids. And I think just a simple life. And I think most people are aiming and striving towards that. I try not to listen to the negative.
I think that's
just keep driving forward.
That's solid advice. I appreciate we've got a couple of minutes left. Just wanted to see if before I just hog all of Jordan's time, did anyone have a question for Jordan that they wanted to ask?
Where the radio's silence.
It's fine. Otherwise I can keep going. But So, yeah.
You have a question, yeah?
Just get the mic.
You've had a great entrepreneurial career.
Thank you.
Incredible to watch, the growth of myenergi there. What would you have done differently?
That's a great question, actually. It's always easier with hindsight. I think at one point we grew our business a little bit too fast based on government incentives, because when they were pulled, that was really detrimental to the business because we was quite top heavy and we had to make some redundancies, and that really, really impacted me and impacted the morale of the business. So I think I wouldn't hang the business growth and my hat on government incentives anymore. I'd make sure that we're building a business, even though they were saying they weren't going anywhere, they always do. And I think I've learned that you need to build the foundation strong and grow a little bit slower, just in case, because that was really brutal. And what else would I do? I'd probably push for innovation a little bit faster within the team. I'd say, come on, let's try. The past few years, it was all fine tuning the products that we already had out in the market. And in that time, it allowed a lot of competition to enter the space. So I think I'd maybe freshen up the look of the product a little bit more, because it's still feature rich in comparison to the competitors that are entering the space, but maybe just give it a facelift. would have done wonders for the business. But overall, I'm pretty proud of where the business is. So it's always easy to say with hindsight because you can't see what's in front of the plane, essentially.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Perfect. In which case, anyone else? I think we might be time up.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us and
Thank you.
sharing your insight.
Thanks.
Round of applause for Jordan.